Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max and Trev with BuzzTox here with our Westworld Episode 6 analysis, The Adversary.
Yeah.
What's going on, Trev?
Not too much. Very, very busy lately, man.
Dude, unreal busy for me. I had a 30-minute presentation and my dog has fleas. It's absolutely insanity.
Yeah. I literally just finished putting up drywall, washed my hands, and sat down to do this.
I know, man, it's nuts. So let's get into this episode. So we start the episode and we pretty much just follow Maeve. Maeve wakes up, she goes to work, and she gets a man to kill her, and then this results in her waking herself up to see Felix again. So obviously she's totally en route now. She knows how to get herself killed. She knows how to wake up, like be a part, join Felix, and then, communicate with him.
She's got a whole system.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it just really shows that and explores that, more throughout the episode. But then we go back to Bernard and Elsie, and they're talking about this tracker that they found in the previous episode. And Elsie believes that it was done by somebody working for the park, or it had to have been done by somebody working for the park. And, I thought it was interesting because Elsie originally said that she thought it was Bernard, but then she realized that he's been there forever. And, I almost think it's a little nod in a sense, because this whole, we're going to delve into it more throughout the episode, but Bernard being a host, I am not jumping on the bandwagon as much. I would say I'm 50-50. Where are you sitting with Arnold being a host?
You mean Bernard?
Yeah.
But, I don't know yet. I feel like we were kind of sort of talking about this earlier today, and I feel like that would have been a little bit more Bernard-centric, at least in my opinion. You were thinking that it was. For me, it's like they would have shown a little bit more of Bernard if they were going to set up that story. It's still possible for the future, but I feel like he's definitely human, at least in my opinion, at this point from what I've seen.
Yeah, see, I think they've laid the groundwork for him being a good character, so I think it would be a good reveal if they said that he was a host. But I just want to clarify, I'm not the kind of guy who's like, this person's a host, and this person's a host, and this person's a host. That's why I'm looking at this Bernard thing with a little bit of skepticism. But I'm not ignorant to the information provided. So at this point, I'm almost more leaning towards Bernard being a host, because there's almost, there's a lot of information backing it up. Why did his son die in a world where they've pretty much cured disease and they can create life? You think that they'd be able to fix that. And, he did talk to his wife over Skype. I'm not ignoring, or Skype, over, video chat. So I'm not ignoring that. But there are a lot of things backing it up. And I think this is almost a little Easter egg, how Elsie says that he's been there forever. I could be looking way too much into it, but I just thought it was interesting that she said that he's been there forever.
Well, no, we've seen in the past with Anthony Hopkins' character saying stuff like, I know how your brain works. And there's all these little nuanced things that definitely could point in that right direction. But I don't know if we're getting that reveal anytime soon, even in this season at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But looking at it, just in general, if anyone would be a host that is considered human now, to me it would be Bernard. It makes sense because he's the lead programmer. That's what Arnold was before he died. And it makes sense for Ford to almost make a host and put him in programming, because that should be his right-hand man, The programmer is the most important asset to running Westworld, in Ford's, point of view. And he gets access to all this information that it could possibly be through Bernard. So I don't know. It's interesting. And there's more hints later in this episode.
Well, definitely. Even not in this episode, we have Anthony Hopkins talking about how he knew him and Teresa were together. So it's like, is he doing these secret logs with Bernard? It's definitely left open, but I think we're gonna see a lot of people are hosts. You know what I mean? Eventually you're gonna be like, oh my god, they're gonna peel back the curtain and you're gonna see oh my god, this has so many layers.
We'll see, but I think with Bernard, I don't think he's a typical host in a sense. I feel like Ford wanted somebody that he could trust in a programming position, kind of like the way he and Arnold kind of had that camaraderie. So I think, if Ford is a host, he was given certain characteristics to make him be like his own person. He's not so scripted in a sense.
Yeah, he's definitely, he's not confined to the programming of the hosts. He's
pretty
sentient.
much he is his own person,
He's
except
sentient,
he was
yeah.
created and Ford gave him the values that he wanted as a programmer. But then him and Elsie continue to talk, and, they say that, this person that was transmitting the carved rock, it has to be somebody inside of the park doing industrial espionage, which shows that she thinks that it's really business focused, like maybe another company wants information on how the park is run.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But on top of that, Westworld has a lot of valuable information other than how their hosts work. Like, they make people sign contracts on everything that is in the park is left for the park. If you bleed in the park, if you jizz in the park, it belongs to the park.
Yeah.
And all of the dirt, all of the video footage of, all these clients killing people and doing these terrible acts, that could be used as blackmail or many other things outside of Westworld.
Huge.
It's like Ashley Madison.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when that was leaked, there were tons of people, like even like big celebrities or whatever, and the Duggars, he was a part of that on that Ashley Madison cheating website. It could be the same thing, like a leak of Westworld. And what do they see? They see, the CEO of this company killing and unfortunately raping people. Yeah,
exactly. No, it definitely could be bad for business, or good for business if you're trying to get certain laws passed or laws overlooked for this sort of weird things that they do behind the scenes. I think there's a whole other, even Teresa made mention of what the park is to those people. So I think the amusement park is a whole front to something we haven't seen, more like a scientific endeavor or a psychological endeavor that they're delving deep on, and it's in the package of an amusement park. So these humans can come and be like subhuman in this place, and it's sort of like a way of testing and experimenting on the human condition in a world where humanity is sort of just hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, and even more so in this world, because in this world, obviously, like, animatronics have almost taken over this world. Imagine a world where you don't have to work, you're given a certain amount of money for food, you're given a certain amount of money to survive, and you actually have no purpose in life. You have nothing to work towards.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about the maintenance guys. Like, he says specifically that he can't afford to go to the park, right? So that's what's crazy to me. So there is still a wealth gap in this world, even though everything can be taken care of. So I don't know if it's because it serves a story where you would have people that have less at stake or more at stake in certain cases, but it's just interesting to see that these guys work at Disney but are not allowed in the park. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, moving on, we see Bernard, after getting this information from Elsie, he actually goes downstairs to level B82.
Yes.
Because I guess he wants to uncover some information through the older computer. And he uses his name, Bernard Lowe. This is the first time we hear his last name, Lowe. And I want to give a shout out to Memundus, who actually said in the chat that Bernard Lowe could be an anagram for Arnold. But then he said Arnold Weber, and I didn't even consider that. I don't know if Weber is actually his last name.
Yeah, I haven't heard it and I haven't seen it anywhere, but that would be really awesome if it is, though, man. Huge
it would
shout
be crazy.
Out. That's awesome.
So this could just be crazy speculation, but I thought it was a very interesting perspective and idea, so I thought I would include it in here. And, you could back it up with, other facts. Like we said before, he is a programmer. He is, it seems like, he's having conversations with Dolores, having her pursue the maze, and he obviously has an underlying love for these hosts and is almost showing empathy towards Dolores.
Yeah.
So plus, there are connections between him and Arnold.
Plus, he's like a game maker, and this is something you would see in, just like an Easter egg in old school games, right? So that serves his personality, or what we think his personality would be like, right? He was a game designer, and then he sort of delved into the psychological aspects of the NPCs, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. So he makes his way into, this location. It's really shady. The lights are still flickering.
Yeah, I know.
And we see the old man in black costume from the movie.
Yeah, the gunslinger or whatever his name is.
The gunslinger one. And, a lot of people, which is typical, a lot of people do this, is they run with it and say, see, it's canon. This movie is a part of this show. I don't think so.
No, they're just paying homage.
it's paying homage. It is just an Easter egg. If anything, I think this is a modern take on the story of Westworld. And what I think is it is a retelling in a modern sense. Like the Man in Black in the movie was a host who broke free, who was considered the enemy.
Yeah.
And I think flipping it and putting a more intelligent modern spin on it is taking the Man in Black who is actually human. And he is freeing the hosts. And he is actually considered, at face value, the Man in Black as evil. But he is actually a good person.
Yeah.
So it's literally the reverse of everything in the movie.
We gotta take in consideration how far ahead of its time that movie was, as well as like the book and the source material. Like, that's an amazing idea. That was when I don't even know when it was that book came out, and then the movie's what, the 70s?
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome. That's like, that would have been an amazing out of nowhere movie back in the day.
Yeah, no, it's what I really like now though is we live in a time where we're really exploring human corruption. And I think it's really interesting to look into ourselves as a species, and like we have something like Westworld and something like, the new reboot of Planet of the Apes where the apes are the good guys and the hosts are the good guys, because we can really look at the dark side of, humanity and really empathize with another entity, which I find really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's also like a metaphor for how humanity is going now, where we're turning more robotic, while these robotic things are turning more human. It's very interesting play on everything, societal-wise.
Yeah, exactly. And, Bernard sits down on this old computer, and I just want to draw attention to it. The old Westworld logo popped up on the computer. To me, this further hints at the timeline. I said before, I'm not sold on Bernard being a host, but I'm not, like, he could be both for me. I don't really, I'm in between. It's guaranteed for me that William is the Man in Black and the time period is shifted.
Yeah, for both of us. For us, it's a given.
It's not even a question for me. I can explain every issue.
I know, and it seems like a lot of people in the comments still have an issue seeing what we're seeing, but we're not the only ones saying it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we've really delved deep into every single concept and every single question that people raise. So many people in the comment section below says, William can't be the Man in Black. It can't be 30 years in the past because of this example. Chances are we've touched on the example and we've given our thoughts on it. I think every perspective that you could debunk this theory, it can be proven to also be true.
Exactly. You're not supposed to know the twist. That's the trouble with these things. When we watch it with such analyzing eyes, like we picked up on it 20 minutes after the second episode, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean they did a bad job at it. It's just we're used to watching things so analytically, and that's what we enjoy about the show.
Yeah, and when William walks in, you can't dismiss that giant logo when he walks in.
No, definitely
not. As
not.
an organization, you do not promote yourself with your old brand identity. Trust me, it's common sense. I'm a business student. You promote yourself with your current brand identity, like your current brand. And, we see with later in the episode, the whole business is marketed with the new Westworld logo, not the old Westworld logo.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that Bernard has to go downstairs to this abandoned place to see that old logo, and the fact that we see Ford's flashbacks and we also see that old logo, and we see William walk in to the building and we see the old logo, confirms that it is 30 years in the past.
Exactly. And that the fact that there is an old system knows that there's definitely was two timelines at one point, so it just all fits together in such a neat package in our minds, definitely.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask you, this place seems, abandoned. It could be considered in rough shape. Do you think it was just abandoned? Like, okay, guys, we're going to build a couple levels up to, relaunch.
83 levels up?
Yeah, 83 levels up. So I guess that hints at something really went down in this office space.
Yeah, it's weird, though, because it's right below them. I have a hard time reconciling what happened down there that they needed to just abandon everything.
Well, what level was Abernathy stored at? B83?
83.
B83.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, if you look at that environment, for it, like Westworld is very clean, very sleek. Why is there an underground place where they store all these bots? That seems very destroyed. It seems like what we said earlier. It seems like almost a destroyed mall.
Yeah, like it does. It looks like a mall.
Which,
in
to
that
me,
first
it was
episode where they
probably
go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks very reminiscent of where William pulls up to, right? It's like a tube or a subway line that he gets off at, and he goes up an escalator, and that looks exactly like where they went down to. And even like it's totally in ill repute. Like he comes off, and they get flooded with water, and they're like, "Oh, the air conditioning's done." So it's just they've totally mothballed it, and I don't know why. That's the thing. Like maybe there's records down there that they need. Like everybody that needs to go down there needs clearance, right? So maybe it's just buried shit, and maybe we will see in the Williams timeline what happened to make this happen. You know what I mean? Like what catastrophic event happened 30 years in this timeline to cause such a catastrophic abandonment of this office space.
Yeah, and I feel like if you look, every aspect of the park, there's a level underground that has been somewhat destroyed. So I think it really hints to, an event did happen, and, possibly, maybe hosts did actually get into the offices and did get into, where Westworld actually has been controlled. And then they had to shut it down, and then that's why they keep all the unregistered, like, the bad hosts there that are decommissioned, because that's where they were left after this, like, uprising or something happened.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you think, like, they started, like, coming in where everyone was and start attacking?
Maybe, yeah, but the reason that didn't affect them as a business is because maybe it just happened in the research facilities, like all these areas where consumers or customers wouldn't be.
Yeah, like just a breach of code.
And that's what the maze could be, like on top of what we think is transcending humanity and a place to break the place. It's also a place to enter into the actual operations part of Westworld.
Like a physical maze and a metaphorical maze combined.
I don't know, yeah, but like it could be also a spot to let the hosts explore outside of their world, which would be in the real world, and Arnold would want to give them a chance to stand up and uprise against, humans. But I think whatever happens, I think the finale of this season is actually going to be, we're going to see the downfall of Westworld 30 years earlier. We're going to see how these locations that Bernard is visiting right now, how it got abandoned, why it got abandoned. We're going to see Dolores be a part of that, and we're going to see William stop her from pursuing her goal. And, I think Ford is going to take that to note and then create Teddy in William's image to keep her on loop.
Yeah.
But anyways, Bernard continues to be on the computer, and he figures out there are 5 additional anomalies detected in Sector 17. So there's a sector, and there are 5 hosts that actually aren't registered on their up-to-date computers, which is crazy. And then we snap to Ford, and these cuts are important because it almost shows that because of this it's Ford. How the smart cuts.
Yeah.
So he's in town, and he's in the town where Dolores was with William with the fountain, and he's deciding if he wants to build a canyon, and if he would build a canyon, it would be through the town. Which is insane, the level of resources these guys have.
Oh, yeah. He's got, like, a crazy land-moving machine.
Yeah. So he doesn't want to be any more disruptive to the town. So he decides to make the canyon slightly shy of the town, but close by. So I think this just hints at, like, how huge the story he has planned.
Like, do you get the feeling he's digging for something? Like, not literally, like, looking for treasure, but, like, he's just destroying everything but looking for something at the same time. I really think he is paranoid that whatever the maze is coming to a head, and he's trying to find it before anyone does.
Well, it could seem like it because, he looks at the table and he sees the maze on it. And, the maze can really be found anywhere. And when he sees the maze, he kind of looks shocked and kind of like disturbed in a sense.
Yeah, like it's something beyond his control. And I think he's desperate and he's literally digging the shit out of this place.
Yeah, so I think it's something Arnold created before he died. And, Ford never really understood what it was. He knows what concept, he knows of the maze, but he doesn't really know what it is. And I think he is in search of that in a sense. He doesn't truly understand what it is. I don't know, but, whatever it is, Ford is somewhat interested in it. And we get another scene with Ford where he seems like he's doing some landscaping. He's planning where things are going. I may be looking way too much into this, but it shows the zoom in on a white church, and it shows Ford moving it a little bit before he gets up to grab the notebook.
Yeah.
We know right now he's building these kind of, I don't know the best way to call it. I'm just going to call it a black church. These black churches, even though the one that we saw wasn't really a church. It was more of a tower.
Yeah.
With a cross on it.
To me now, it seems like that was a burned out chapel.
Yeah.
And it didn't look too burnt out, but I don't know. I don't have the image in front of me, but it looked to me like it could have been the burned out church that Dolores keeps picturing herself in.
See, because here I don't have the answers, but what I originally thought was the white churches were only in the past, 30 years ago, and it was a part of a storyline.
Yeah.
And then these churches were removed because of this event, and now Ford is bringing back this storyline with these black churches, kind of having it being the shadow of what it was 30 years earlier. But what I found interesting is, why is he moving this white church? Why is he bringing the white churches back? I don't know. But the one thing I did notice was the map that he is looking at. There's a town and there's a white church just off to the side, and that's the one that he's moving. To me, I could be wrong. It looks exactly like the flashback Dolores had of the church. It's the church near kind of a graveyard. It looked like the exact same map setup.
Yeah.
So it seems like Ford is planning something that is directly connected to Dolores' memories and flashbacks, which I'm sure has some significance, so I'm not sure.
I feel like that scene that we're seeing with Dolores, I think I might have already even said this, but I think that Dolores and William on that loop got so close to, maybe even met Arnold, or whatever Arnold is, or whatever form he is in, 30 years ago at this church. And Ford, or the moderators of that time, just sent in the cavalry and just like killed everybody, including Dolores. And that will be the final scene as Arnold's telling William and Dolores the truth about what the maze is and what his plan for the park was. And then that kicks what's his name out, and then it sets him on this whole thing for looking for this whole thing.
Right. See, I don't think the white church will have to do with Arnold being there, but I honestly can't pin the significance of it in depth right now. But I find it interesting how Ford seems to be replanning something in that exact place where Dolores is having those flashbacks.
Yeah, and that's what makes me think that he's trying to harken back to that time where Dolores broke code, so that he can find this maze and maybe destroy it or enter it himself.
Yeah, who knows? But after he moves that church, he looks up and grabs a notebook, and he goes through it. And a couple key things we see sketches of Dolores.
Yeah.
And we see a sketch of the maze. And I think it's pretty clear that this is Arnold's notebook.
100%.
Unless there's like some crazy like plot twist, but I'm dead set on it being Arnold's notebook.
Yeah.
And to me, I just think it shows, Dolores is the key role to this maze. He designed Dolores specifically to seek out this maze. That's why she is sketched next to the maze. And that's what she's made to do. And that's why, Ford hasn't harmed her. That's why he hasn't removed her. And that could be, why he keeps her in literally the safest place on the park, in the whole park.
Exactly.
And makes her the damsel in distress. And that's the reason he has Teddy there, to just keep her in line, waiting there for him forever and ever.
And she constantly has to be reprogrammed because she's meant to break her loop.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, it's really
I agree with that a lot because...
And on top of that, she's the only character that's never left her loop. Like, Maeve was reprogrammed. She used to have a daughter and live in the fields, but then she's only been a brothel keeper for a year.
Yeah.
Dolores has been the daughter of Abernathy living on Sweetwater for 30 years.
Yeah, and that's when she... Well, see, she didn't get rebooted, though. That's what I mean. Like, that was her thing all along, right? Like, she was on the farm. She was a farm girl, but she was always constantly having to be adjusted because she would go off the loop. But it's so hard to explain when you're trying to explain two timelines.
Yeah, I know. I
because
agree.
Where do you think she is now? Do you think she's just going around corrupting people?
Literally, the way the story's going to go is present-day Dolores is going to be wherever past Dolores is with William. She's going to be following the trail that she went on with William.
So
until maybe episode 9 or something like that, where we will see the Man in Black kind of meet up with current Dolores. And then possibly we will see past Dolores kind of break into these office spaces that are now abandoned. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. Maybe that's what the maze is. It's just the offices.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that, just so she would totally like figure it out. But then I feel like that would take away from Maeve already doing that. Like, we see her do the walkthrough in this episode. She has full access to the reality that she doesn't know.
Yeah, I think she's going to be the one leading this rebellion in the present time.
Oh, yeah. And that was another point I wanted to say about the timeline. We see when William walks in the park on episode 2, we see Clementine come out, but we also see the woman in white come out as well behind her in the back. And
damn straight.
When you see the advertisement that has Maeve in her like prairie timeline, you see Clementine and the woman in white at the brothel. So it's definitely it's just 100%. It's just 100%.
And then let's go to Teddy and the Men in Black. They're on the road to Pariah. They're in the location where Dolores was with William, kind of the desert graveyard, I want to call it.
Cemetery, graveyard.
And Teddy talks about the maze. And he talks about a couple points about it. He says it's an old maiden myth. He said, the maze is a sum of a man's life. He says, in the center is a man killed over and over again countless times, but he always ends up climbing his way back to life. He said, the last time he came back, he killed all of his oppressors. And he built a house and surrounded it with a maze so he could be the only one to navigate through it. So, what does this mean?
I don't know, but I didn't hear that he built a house, but that makes me think about Ford.
Yeah.
Right?
Ford's house that he built for his family.
Yeah, but did he build it or did Arnold? Arnold built his whole family for him as a gift, he said.
I don't know.
Right? So it's hard to figure out, because are we picturing a maze or are we picturing some place of truth? And then that's like you go back to a church, right? And then the church could be the entrance to whatever creation Arnold came up with to exercise his truth.
Well, let's try and solve this off script. I haven't really delved deep into this, but let's go point by point. Old maiden myth, the maze is the sum of a man's life. So we're assuming this applies to Arnold. So what was the sum of Arnold's life? It was programming hosts, and he had a belief that he wanted them to almost have equal rights to humans.
Yeah, but like you could apply that to anybody, because think of Teddy, he dies every fucking hour in this show. And he comes back and back and back, and this loop that he's on now is the time where he's killing all his oppressors.
Right.
So then, if like there's so many layers here, if he's in the image of William, who was the white hat version of the Men in Black, then it's like it's even more deep, right?
Well, you could almost say the maze is the sum of a man's life. Or it could be, Arnold lived his life as a programmer and felt kind of out of touch with everyone, all of humanity, right? So he built this maze to kind of protect himself from everybody. But I find it interesting how all of these hosts that are seeking this maze, like if you look at Dolores and if you look at Teddy, he's seeking the maze, but he doesn't even know it. They are the most human, and they are the most of like themselves in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's like Dolores chooses who she wants to be. She doesn't want to be the damsel. She wants to be, just who she is, and that's when she's approaching the maze.
That's what I mean, and we start to see it. That's what made me think when you get to the maze, you get to choose your own destiny, and she's already sort of starting to do that in at least William's timeline, where she says, "I imagined where I could pull a gun," or whatever she says when she shoots all those guys. She says something to the effect like, "I imagined a reality where I could pull the trigger," basically, right? So she's breaking her loop without having to do anything to do with the maze. She's just doing it. So it goes back to saying, yes, she is the key to the maze, but maybe she has remote access through her own internal coding. I don't know, man. I feel like we're maybe digging a little too deep with not enough information on it. But it's fun to speculate on what it is. I'm just really curious to see whether it will be an actual physical maze that they have to go through, or it's some epicenter of consciousness.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. And it'll be interesting to see if we see it in this season. But after this conversation, they kind of go off route and go towards Pariah because there are actually soldiers nearby and they want to kind of go around them. But and then we shoot back to Felix, and Felix is explaining to Maeve how she was created. She asks him an interesting question. She asks him, how does he know if he wasn't created? And, he says, I was born, and, he cannot be controlled, and she can be controlled. But then Maeve kind of takes off his glove and says that they feel the same, and he pretty much says that they are the same. The only difference is that she is pretty much under control by them. And another key difference is that the processing power in her brain is so much stronger than everyone else.
Yeah, which is so crazy. So cool. Like this is why I like Maeve as a character, because I feel like her arc is really getting the meat of the revolt that's coming up, right? Like you just see so much cool stuff with Maeve in this episode specifically. Like we get to see like their skill trees on the iPads that they have, and we get to see her getting boosted. Like it's so awesome. And
no, I really like that scene where he showed her the tablet, and as she was looking at it, she was trying to say things, and she saw that it was like she's programmed. Like it was showing what she was saying.
Exactly.
And she kept trying to beat it, and she couldn't beat it. And then she ended up just being like, and then tried to. She was like going into improvisation, and then she just totally canceled. And she just totally shut down.
Yeah, but
Felix freaked out.
And he was able to bring her back, but like, so cool.
But I thought it was just so well done. Like just from the show standpoint, like I feel like it was perfectly done. Like I loved how it said, it like lined up the words and then it said conflict and then it paused. Because then she didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
It like read her so perfectly and they handled that scene so well.
Oh, it's so cool, man. I adore this stuff outside of Westworld anyways. Anything with AI or anything with like self-aware consciousness stuff, I'm a sucker for. So just the fact that this scene happened was so awesome. Like, I mean, like this is earlier on that scene where you see her script, but even like you see like her skill tree and you see all those other things. It's so awesome.
Yeah, it's unreal. And then we go to Bernard and Teresa, and he wants to talk to her about Ford, and she says that Ford knows about them, and they have to call their little affair quits. And Teresa is really questioning Ford's leadership because he's obviously ruining a bunch of storylines and causing a lot of trouble for the organization. And Bernard said that he doesn't think that Ford is a problem, which I guess eventually changes, and then he ends up leaving. But then we go back to Felix and Maeve, and she actually wants to go upstairs, and she convinces him. So, what do you think is Felix's motives? Because I know there's a lot of people who are angry because they don't understand how somebody could be that stupid. I just want to hear your point of view.
I think he feels bad for her.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't. The actor who plays him maybe didn't sell it enough. But I feel like when she starts breaking down, he actually starts to feel empathy for her, and then he's like, "Wait a second, they treat me like shit here. What? Like, yeah. I just like I appreciate what they do here, and now he feels bad for this creation who is now self-aware, and he just wants to show her what it is, because he maybe half feels bad for her, and then half doesn't think that like whatever she's doing right now will last very long. But then it becomes sort of that point goes out the window later on in the
yeah.
episode. But it just seems like he just did it because he's sort of the guy that would do that because he would get strong-armed, but then at the same time he felt actually bad for her and bad for them as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't have a problem with this at all, because, you know, from his perspective, like, she is so human. And I think, you know, there are a lot of people who, like, you know how in a social interaction, how somebody can, you know, just kind of overpower you in a sense, and you can't say no? That's what she did to him, and he's also feeling, like, really empathetic towards her. So it doesn't surprise me that he would show her around. And, you know, the way he did it, people got angry over. But to me, when he was walking her through all the rooms, it looked so clearly to me that he was using the tablet to control her.
Yeah.
As if he was going to move her somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think they could have hid it that way. And that's how they kind of sneaked her through.
Yeah, it was like he was bringing her around for maintenance. Nobody even paid attention to them. So that obviously seems like a natural motion that people do. They would walk naked hosts throughout the offices for maintenance.
Yeah, and this scene was just amazing. Like, he walked her through the kind of like the death room where they clean up all the bodies.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like brutal.
I was trying to link like a 9 Circles of Hell reference to this, but I couldn't do it. But it seemed like he took her on each floor, and there was something going on with every single
aspect
host
of the business.
Yeah,
but, it was crazy.
It's brutal.
The most fascinating thing is we see a body actually being brought to life. I thought it was perfectly done.
Oh my god! Like for this, I had in my mind, I thought they would be painted. You know what I mean? Like there was something about me that the white milky skeletons that we saw in the intro and stuff like that. I thought they would go and get painted for some reason. But it's cool. You see them getting injected with life.
I think I've always said, I don't remember what I've said, but I'm pretty sure I always thought that they were 100% organic.
No, I know they're organic, but I was just like, I thought they were, for some reason, their skin would be painted. And that the white things were just the base, and then they would go on to pigmentation department. Where
I know for a fact I didn't think that.
No, I know. It was just like, I didn't realize that a dead body with no blood could actually be that white. It makes sense, right? And then when they pump it full of life, it starts to come to.
I thought that was so amazing. Like, they have all the aspects of human life,
really awesome.
And when you add the blood, it just starts pumping through, and then it comes to life. It was like the coolest thing ever.
Oh, it's so cool, man.
And then as she's walking, she sees a bull, she sees deer, she sees horses. She sees the host kind of testing and seeing how they will act in Westworld.
Yeah, like the poker table.
Yeah, and then he ends up taking her to design, and this is where we see the new logo, which is, present time.
Yeah.
And, Felix really wants her to leave, and he feels like kind of a pushover in a sense, like that's just kind of her personality. And Maeve is a little bit more dominant, and she stays and watches the commercial. So we see Clementine at the brothel, and we also see that lady in the white shirt, which William also sees in episode 2.
Yeah.
And we see the host that William was actually with. I don't know. Like, we obviously can't say what this host is right now. We can't say if she's destroyed. We can't say if they kept her. We can't say, like, she could still be around. I don't know.
No, she's a hostess, right?
Yeah.
Like, she probably welcomes everybody to the park. They don't probably need to upgrade her all the time, right? She serves her purpose. She welcomes people to the park, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
She seems DTF because she offers it up to William, and that's her purpose. And she would be the first face you would see once you got to, I don't know, like, what would you call Westworld? Like almost like a campus in a way. Like it's this huge park, but you would have to come into the entrance and then make your way over to the facility and then make your way into the park. So she would be one of the first faces you would see once you got into the facility.
Yeah, no, I'd be really interested to see her again. I think it'd be interesting. But Maeve, even after that, she sees her and her daughter. And it kind of really like breaks her down. And, I just found this interesting because, obviously she has the memory of her daughter, but then she also remembers constantly the memory of her almost being scalped and then the man in black kind of walking in.
Yeah.
And I think, I find that really interesting how that's really what stuck with her is the tragedy. And, I think you can't really deny the impact that the man in black is having on these hosts.
Well, that's what makes me so curious as to what happened with Maeve. Like, why did they switch her loop? What does the man in black have anything to do with her? Right? Yeah. Because if it only happened a year ago, like, what happened that, like, it's so interesting because she's such a cool character now that we've seen her outside of the actual park and what she's capable of. But what happened with her? Because I have nothing when it comes to this.
Yeah, and
I don't even have the faintest idea of what could have transpired between those guys.
Yeah, and I love it because the man in black, on face value did something so terrible, but, even though she has this terrible memory of the man in black doing this to her, she remembers almost the happiest moment in the life that she never had, the happiest dream. She had a daughter, she had a family, she lived like in this like wonderful house,
Yeah.
And the man in black doing something so terrible allowed her to experience something so great. And it is definitely one of the reasons why she is so self-aware in this time.
Yeah, I think that harkens back to what I was saying when he said something subtle. He just said, when you're suffering, you're at your realist, or something to that effect. Yeah. And whatever he did to her on some loop made her break code at one point, maybe, and she got a glimpse of something, and maybe that's why they had to repurpose her as the brothel leader, right? And she remembers this moment up until she breaks code, and it seems like the man in black did something awful to her, but I think he just escalates it to a point where it breaks code, and then he can maybe talk to her on a real level and say, listen, you now have the ability to create your own destiny, and boom, he moves on.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was another point I wanted to say about the timeline. We see when William walks in the park on episode 2, we see Clementine come out, but we also see the woman in white come out as well behind her in the back. And
damn straight.
When you see the advertisement that has Maeve in her like prairie timeline, you see Clementine and the woman in white at the brothel. So it's definitely it's just 100%. It's just 100%.
And then they go back downstairs, and Felix tells her that, she was a previous build during that time when she was with her daughter. And he also gives her some insider information on how they actually don't rewrite the hosts completely because that takes way too much time.
Yeah.
So they pretty much just slightly tweak the hosts.
Just upgrade the firmware.
And then put them into a new role. So they always maintain a similar personality and similar, traits and personality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found that interesting how, everyone's gone through that. And as we talked earlier, Dolores seems to have not. She's always been on the same circuit. And I think she's always really been the same person, the damsel. And I feel like she always has to be that damsel to keep her from being who she's actually supposed to be.
I just love it, like, when you think about, like, creationists, right? If you thought about if there was a god and they were creating humans, that the uprising of consciousness within the things that they're creating ended up being through human laziness. You know what I mean? Like, we can't program this because it's so much work. And then they ended up leaving something that was so important to the beings on them that it broke the code that they created. Like, it's so deep and so awesome.
Well, it goes on to say, like, mistakes is the how to progress to humanity.
I know, but it always goes down the street of love conquers all, right? Like, she had this daughter, even though it was a host daughter, but it still is always like love conquers all. And I think we're going to see a lot of that, but it still really fits with the theme in this case. But usually that's a cop-out, right?
Well, with the whole love conquers all thing, like, even like from episode 1, we've been talking about human emotion.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing. That's the strongest emotion, or we're led to believe. So, what conquers all.
Yeah, we see it with Abernathy, for example. Like, he is programmed to love Dolores.
Yeah.
And the fact that he saw the photo, he's supposed to ignore it as a host. He's programmed to ignore it, but his love for Dolores and to protect Dolores conflicts with the code to ignore the picture.
Exactly. And so love is what complicates humans. Right? Which would obviously complicate intelligent beings.
Yeah, so his unbelievable love for Dolores, he now cannot ignore that picture because now he is a person who needs to consider these things in order to protect Dolores, which he is programmed to also protect. So that's how he kind of unhinged himself. That's why he sat out there all night thinking it over.
Exactly. He unhinged himself because it's his love for Dolores versus his programming not to question his reality. His love for Dolores is too strong versus his coding to not question his reality, so it causes a conflict, and Abernathy's out, as we've created the verb.
Exactly. So we're going to start seeing these human emotions breaking through the code that they are in, and that's why suffering has been so effective for the Man in Black. You know, you can't create love in one trip to Westworld, but you can create suffering, and that's the way to make them the most human.
Yeah.
But what did William achieve? Through his whole time being in Westworld, he actually achieved love.
Yeah. And
I think we're going to see Dolores, she's already breaking code now, and I think it's going to continue to go, and as she falls in love with William.
Well, we see that conversation with her and Teddy, which we know it's ripping from the script that her and William had. Like, you came back, right? That's not something her and Teddy talk about. It's something that her and William will eventually talk about. So that's like the sign-off that he gives her. Like, I will be back for you. And that's what she remembers because of that love emotion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's going to be the downfall is, when he does come back, she's not going to remember him. And then that's where the tragedy starts, where you love someone so much, but they can't remember you. And I think that's, the spiral for William. But then, totally irrelevant, we see Sylvester come in and say that he's planning on ratting on Felix because he's spending a lot of time with Maeve, doing a lot of weird things like dressing her. So Maeve actually ends up threatening him. And that's that.
Yeah, I can't, that guy serves the story, I guess, but I can't stand that guy. He's just a douche.
Yeah, and then we go to another shot of Teresa, and she's actually up in her office, and she's talking to someone who speaks Chinese or Japanese, or I don't identify.
Pretty sure it's Japanese.
Okay. But she's pretty much talking to Asian markets, whether that's Japan, whether that's China, or I don't know, it's something. And pretty much what we can pull from it is she says that something is urgent, and she says that she will do what she can.
Yeah.
And she terminated the external connection. So she terminated the communication that she had with him from inside the park, which shows that there's almost a level of secrecy there.
Yeah.
Because it was terminated. They didn't just end the call, it was terminated.
Yeah.
So, here it shows that she is clearly hiding something. And, somebody in the comment section below said that, maybe they're smuggling out information to these Asian markets. And I don't know how, but I missed this scene somehow. That she was talking to these markets outside.
I remember seeing this. I just thought it was like the shareholder. I thought I threw it under the buses Oh, she's just talking to the shareholders from Asia.
Yeah, it could be the shareholders too. So I don't know, but if they're gonna tie, these markets and these Asian markets into the story, it has to be tied to a character, an important character. In this case, it seems like it is definitely tied to Teresa, but hopefully it's tied to another character to give it a little bit more meaning.
Yeah. Well, the scenes that we see later about Teresa, I think, was sort of supposed to relate to this scene.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But then Teresa actually leaves and she goes to visit Lee, and the guy's drunk off his ass, sitting by the pool.
Oh, I can't stand that guy either.
Yeah, and he's really butthurt because Ford ended up messing up all of his storylines with his new project. And he says that he is creatively flaccid, which is great.
Good line.
What?
Good line.
I know. He always says the weirdest shit.
I feel like he's the worst actor.
You know what? You say that. I watched it again today, and you know what? I appreciate what he's doing.
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't buy his character.
He's a little over the top, but I actually like it. I like the guy.
I hate
him, but
I almost feel like his audio is like one tick too high, maybe, and that's why I feel like it's just too cheesy. Like as soon as he started talking to that chick, I knew he was being set up, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So we go back into Westworld, and Teddy and the Man in Black are planning on going through this train tunnel, and the reason they want to do that is because they want to get to the old territories. And, they see these soldiers and they decide to, take their gear and try and sneak in. Which was pretty great because, is Teddy wanted? Is his picture the uniform that he's wearing?
Pretty much. Like we see him back in that flashback that he keeps remembering, where he's with that Wyatt guy, and he's in the Union garb, and he's even wearing the same hat. Like, you think they would have switched hats.
It's the best way to recognize him, man.
It's like, let's dress up like my wanted poster and walk through these guys and see which one picks up on it first. Like, it's ridiculous.
Funny.
Maybe, but no. See, I was thinking maybe he was supposed to do that, right? But the Man in Black seems surprised by what Teddy was able to do, right? So it wasn't like it was planned.
Yeah, so the Man in Black, tells Teddy before they sneak in to make peace with his past indiscretions, which I found, pretty interesting. And then they end up getting caught, and, Teddy ends up just killing two of them, and then they end up getting caught, and, the Man in Black says, like, what are you doing? He's like, making peace with my indiscretions. So it's like, okay, good idea. Good job, man.
Yeah, but that's what goes back to Ford. I can't figure out what Ford wants here because he gave Teddy the cheat codes. And it's almost like he's fast-tracking the Men in Black to what he wants, too. You know what I mean? Like, he just gave carte blanche to Teddy. He has free reign. And now he's the fucking Terminator.
Yeah, so we'll just skip to that scene then. So they get caught, and then later in the show, they're actually captured, and they're going to mark Teddy with the maze, which I find interesting. Why do they want to brand him with this maze? Is it just another Easter egg?
No, I don't get it either. This is the part I'm having the hardest time with. Like, the maze is supposed to be the secret Easter egg for like...
But it's everywhere.
Deep, well, but nobody would understand what it is. They would probably just think it's a native symbol, a part of Westworld, right? And that could be what it is, right? We see this occult kind of thing with that girl that we haven't seen from, I can't even remember what episode it was, where she went out with Teddy, and then Teddy gets kind of butchered, right?
Yeah.
So if Wyatt is alive, and that's his cult, or whatever they are, those horned guys that can't die, then is their whole thing, their symbol, the maze, and this is Ford trying to bury it as something that's a part of the game, and it's only surface deep, whereas the Men in Black knows it's something that's much more greater than some attraction.
Yeah, I don't
Like
even know.
I can't figure it out. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't know, but what I do know is that Ford definitely programmed Teddy to help the Man in Black, in a sense, get to where he needs to go. It seems like
That's what I'm saying. Like he seems he gave him like, okay, he'll be the snowplow from all the bullshit that you'll have to deal with in front of you.
yeah, because he was given, all this ability and all this backstory about Wyatt, so he has this hatred, natural hatred for Wyatt. But it seems like Ford left out of his memory that he actually contributed to this attack, and it seemed like when Teddy was attacked by Wyatt's men, that he was meant to get, beaten up and hung up by that tree.
Yeah, but
so he could be found by somebody.
Okay, but even going back further, skipping our theory about the timelines and all that stuff, right? We know that Arnold created whatever the maze is, right? And we know that the Man in Black is looking for the maze, that he scalped that kissy guy, and that symbol was on the interior of his scalp, meaning that it was a well-hidden secret. So it was something that was created before the whole Wyatt storyline. So what does Wyatt have to do with anything about the maze? That's what I have a hard time understanding. What the hell is going on with Wyatt? Why is this something that Ford is putting in front of any would-be park goers?
I think that
is
Wyatt
he trying to
represents
hide
true
it?
evil. I think they're saying that Wyatt almost represents like the devil. Like he almost represents true evil in a sense. And I think that's interesting because it really contrasts to, all the churches and stuff like that. So I don't know.
So he see, in the first couple of episodes I would have said, oh, he is pushing for these things to be conscious. And then now it seems like no, that would be bad for business. So he's trying to cover up the stuff that would make them conscious. So I don't know. Ford is the most complicated character in this whole thing, because I feel like he did a 180 after episode 3.
Yeah, I don't know. And then we see, what he put into Teddy kind of go into action.
Yeah.
He frees himself in like the most badass scene ever. The Man in Black kind of protects him. Teddy goes in the Gatling gun and just mauls everyone down, just commits mass genocide on all of these soldiers.
Yeah.
And, before he does that, he remembers that when Wyatt was killing everybody, he actually killed some people. So he, in a sense, actually is wanted. He actually is a villain in a sense.
Yeah, I think there's a double meaning there, though.
Most definitely.
So I feel like maybe that we're seeing this massacre from these guys in uniform, Teddy included, but maybe they came in and sort of vigilante justice these guys that were ordered to kill natives. Is my feeling on it right now from what we know, or my I guess theory on why Teddy was executing people and why Wyatt was killing people even though they were in the same uniform. It's almost like they came upon the Union Army destroying or killing innocents, and they were set to wipe these guys out because they felt awful for what they had done. And maybe it relates to the massacre that we saw with Dolores. I don't know.
It seemed like a similar location.
Right? Like it's a town, and that church is on the edge of a town, and everybody gets wiped. And I feel like they're doling out justice, even though it looks like he's just executing people.
Yeah, and I think we really see, Teddy kind of changes the character. At the start, he's just kind of like the mysterious, kind of happy, good guy in a sense. Whereas now, he's got kind of a dark side now.
Yeah.
You've seen him kind of develop. He seemed like a normal guy until he took that Gatling gun and just mowed everyone down. And it almost proves my theory. It doesn't prove it. It adds validity to my theory that Teddy's the recreation of William, because it's like, if Ford wants someone to get to this maze or wants to recreate what happened 30 years ago, and assuming something happened 30 years ago of real importance with Dolores and William,
yeah,
William started off as a white hat, and he progressively changed. You know, in the last episode, we saw him kill a bunch of people. You know, he doesn't think twice about it. He is with Dolores. He's kind of seeping into this kind of darker side because of Dolores, because of his love for her, and that's exactly what Teddy's doing. Teddy is going on this hunt to get Dolores back, and we see him become darker and darker. And it's like Ford gave Teddy that darkness almost to recreate William exactly, because that was the person that helped aid Dolores get to that location.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting.
But, I agree, but it's Ford is the factor I can't figure out. I can't even scratch the surface on him. I really don't understand his motives. He's the park. He's Walt Disney, right? In this whole situation. So he's created the attractions. He had a partner that's dead, that had maybe kept secrets. So what is his motive? Because if you ask me episode 2, I'll be like, oh, he's secretly trying to get these things consciousness now because he's maybe bored with life. But now it seems like he's on the hunt for this maze for his own personal vendetta against Arnold, or he's now realizing that Arnold is taking over through the things that are happening with Abernathy and Dolores. So what? Like, I don't understand him, because it was like he loved these things, and then he started cutting their faces and bulldozing the park. Like he is the hardest one to figure out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't wait for the big reveal for him more than anything.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen everything else in my mind play out, but him, he's a mystery.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we go over to Drunko Lee. And he notices a woman at the bar, and he pretty much approaches her and tells her way too much information about the park.
Oh, he's such an idiot.
And he tells her, there's issues with behavior, and, he's angry that these robots are going off script because he feels like it all should be on script because he is a storyteller, and he feels like it's just hiding their hidden motive for the psycho creator of the park, Ford. And then she ends up taking off, and then he's left alone to keep drinking himself into...
Oh, he gets cut off.
Yeah,
so,
he gets cut off, and then
that's
he
actually kind
off.
of an important scene, though, because it's almost like people are always watching.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was already kind of half in the bag, and then he starts kind of amping it up, and they cut him off.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, while that happens, Elsie ends up visiting Bernard, and she tells him that she thinks that they are very close to finding the saboteur. And she cross-referenced, a bunch of information to track where they are. And she's very confident, and she wants Mesa Bar access, she wants a new office, and she wants a pay raise. So then Bernard actually goes into the game room and asks a lady about Sector 17, continuing the information he got underground. And she says it's been off limits for a while for the development of a future narrative. And she says that no one who is not a host has visited that place. Like, it's pretty much vacant.
Yeah.
Bernard ends up going to Sector 17 and, to seek out the information that he got because he was very curious. And, he sees a lot of shit. He sees, a family of 4, and he immediately assumes that the father is Arnold.
Yeah.
Which is a really big hint, because if you look at the photo that Ford gave Bernard in episode 3, it is young Ford and this man who Bernard was led to believe was Arnold.
Yeah.
So this guy ends up strangling Bernard.
Yeah,
and then
no commands to turn him off.
Yeah, 100% off script, cannot be controlled.
Except for by Ford.
Yeah, exactly.
Who then appears out of nowhere.
Yeah, so where was he? Because honestly, he couldn't have been in that corner, so I don't even know.
Well, yeah, this maybe leads credence to him, to Bernard being a host, and right, there's a little bit of that in here because Ford just happens to be where Bernard is, where he gets in danger. It seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot being hidden here, The fact that he didn't see Ford at all until things started getting haywire, and then Ford appears out of nowhere. It's almost like, Bernard is, in a sense, programmed not to see certain things. If you look at the photo, it's Ford and his father. And there's an empty slot on the right side where somebody should be. You could argue that Arnold was programmed not to see the third person in the picture.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of interesting ideas there. And another thing that I'm struggling with is, the computer told him that there was 5 unmonitored first-gen hosts in Sector 17.
Yeah.
There's 4 members of the family, the 2 sons and the mother and the father.
Exactly. This is what I was talking about with the house. Teddy mentions the house being built and then the maze. So the one that hasn't been accounted for is, right? Who do we think it is?
Well, that means that somebody had to be in the house who wasn't unmonitored. There would have to be a 5th person there.
Or Sector 17, I would assume, is pretty big.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm thinking it's Arnold.
Oh, okay.
Why? Who are you thinking?
Well, I don't know. Like, the best thing I got is maybe Ford made himself kind of like a cyborg in a sense. Maybe gave himself just like he's still human, obviously, but he gave himself an upgrade, maybe in the wrist or something, because he can control these things with ease. So I feel like there has to be a basis of technology somewhere in him. Not the fact that he's a host. I'm 100% sure he's a human, but there's something a part of him that allows him to control these hosts. Maybe he's seen as a host because of this technology. I'm not sure.
It's hard. Like,
it's reaching.
How could he instantly appear? Right? Unless he has full surveillance of everybody at the park, which, I guess he has, because he knew about Teresa and him, right? Teresa and Bernard. And he seems to know a lot of shit. Like, when Teresa came there when she was a kid, like, he knows everything.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And then, he talks to Bernard, and he says, these are the ghosts of his past. And he pretty much calls the boy over, and he says, turn the cheek, and he, like, opens his whole face up.
Yeah. Tulip face.
That's first generation. And if you look at the first generations, they seem very human to me. They're not very robotic.
No.
Like the white shoes guy. Which to me shows that, he was built before the park was actually made public.
I don't know. Like, if one of those things broke down or was on its last legs, it could be robotic. Like, he has a full-on robotic under, like, what would you call it? Under chassis? Like, he's got a robotic face. He's got pieces. He's not flesh and bone.
Yeah, but I think neither are these hosts, but yet they're acting so human.
Yeah, but we know that 30 years ago that the Man in Black said he opened one of these things up and there was 1,000 little pieces. So 34 years ago was when Dolores was created by Arnold. So the timeline before, they could have been all this, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't look like this boy is 100 or 1,000 perfect pieces.
I think
I'm not sure.
No, I would say he is one of those ones that are 1,000 perfect pieces. He is first gen. He is a robot through and through. He's not a flesh and blood AI. He is a full-blown robot.
Okay. And, I know for a fact these first gens, they do bleed. We see the dog dead later in the episode, and it's bleeding.
Yeah.
And when Bernard goes down underground, we see a robotic dog, kind of a base, which, hints that this dog actually is made out of robotics, not out of bone, because it's an old model, and it is bleeding. So it shows that, in this past timeline with William, they can still bleed, and they can still act very human.
No, there's just a layer of flesh around the mechanical parts of it. That's it.
Yeah, and Ford continues to talk to Arnold, and he says that he maintains them himself because, they're robotic and not organic. And, Ford gave backstory and said that, he told Arnold his happiest memory, and that was, him pretty much going through the hills or whatever with his family. And after Arnold heard this story, he created his family as a gift, and he actually kind of flattered the originals, flattered his family, and made them, seem too good for what they were. And Ford made some alterations to make them more realistic, and one of those was, to make his dad who he truly was, which was, more of an alcoholic kind of a character, an angry man.
An aggressive alcoholic.
Yeah. And, Bernard is obviously really concerned about, these unmonitored hosts in the park. And Ford tells him to let him indulge in his past, which I find really interesting because Ford brags that he's not the sentimental type, but yet he goes on these getaways to stare at his family.
Yeah.
So he's obviously hiding something. He's a very sentimental, he's a very tragic character because I don't think he really had, the happiest life. And he's holding on to that moment where he actually was happy.
It's just like he can't reconcile his family. Like, Arnold created this as a gift, but at the same time, it's just sort of a curse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a curse because he can never decommission them because it is his family.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that could almost be, the same position he is in with Dolores. Who knows what she is to him? But, after Ford asks Bernard to let him indulge in his past, he mentions his son. And it's almost like, if you saw your son, wouldn't you, feel this way or whatever, right? And then right after that, Bernard says that he should leave. And I think I can't help but draw a connection, because I want to look at all the evidence, that this is almost a word command for Bernard.
I know. I want to look. I wish I could have watched the episode again, specifically for this scene, because that's what I want to start looking at. When you started talking about Bernard as a host, that's the first thing I want to see. I want to see when Anthony Hopkins is in the room or in the scene with him, if he's doing specific wording and specific hand gestures.
Yeah, every time Ford kind of gets in hot water with Bernard, he mentions the loss of his son, and he kind of gives him a look. Yeah. And I think it's the exact same thing as when he called his younger self, Robert, the child, over and said, "Turn the cheek," and he opened his face.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing with Bernard. He mentions his son, and then Bernard goes, "Okay, I should leave now," and then he ends up leaving.
Yeah. Like it's an emotional heartstring that Ford can pull at any moment.
Yeah, and I think that's really...
was programmed.
Yeah, and I think that's really the only thing that, Ford really has on Bernard. That's the only voice command he has, because I think he put the most humanity into Bernard, but he wanted a programmer who, shared Arnold's values, and was, very human, but in a sense followed what Ford wanted.
See, I'm still not sold on that whole thing, so I'm still in the camp of maybe it's just that it's sort of a contrast because they program these human-like things to have certain hooks, that Ford is such a master manipulator that he's able to even sort of manipulate regular humans. He knows how to manipulate them. He knows how to break their code. So Ford was maybe uncomfortable that Bernard found his secret out, so he hit him where the heartstrings were to get him the fuck out of there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, hey, your son's dead. Get the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a hardcore psychological manipulating dude.
Yeah, and then we go from that brilliant scene that has so much information to Lee pissing on the map.
Yeah. Which I thought was like a hologram, no?
I thought so, but I guess not. He was pissing on Sweetwater.
Yeah.
And then...
God damn this Lee guy. I really hate him.
And then Teresa kind of talks to him, and then he meets that woman that he's talking to at the bar, and she's actually the executive director of the board.
Big surprise.
Why is he not fired yet?
Well, that could have been his firing scene, or they're saving him because there's a change in power coming up.
Yeah, they're saving him almost like they need him, but he's just some drunk-ass writer.
Well, but maybe the board wanted what he was proposing, and Ford was the one that vetoed it.
Yeah, and I think on top of it, he is a valuable asset in a sense because pretty much all of his storylines are in use, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to bring somebody else in.
Even though he's a douche, right? his character's a douche to the viewer, he might be an asset there. And that's why he could have gotten away with what he did.
And they're kind of stuck with him. But, from an outside watching the TV, I love this guy.
Oh, really? Oh, man. I could do without.
I actually enjoy him. I want to see more of him. I think he's funny.
Give me 5 more minutes with Bernard instead of fucking showing this asshole.
Well, we do, because right after this, we go right to Bernard. And, he's doing some research on this thing that he had with Ford. And he learns that there are 82 first-generation hosts in the park.
Yep.
Whereas Arnold told him that there were 5 first-gens in the park, which is his family, or 4. And they said that 47 of these first-generation models were designed by Arnold. And Dolores is also in the list.
Well, you even see it on his iPad. She's like first off.
Exactly. So, in our reaction review, I had my first concern, which was that Dolores was robotic like that, which I hope not. But this, I guess, leads evidence to that she's not, because, I think of Arnold's family as first gens that haven't been updated.
Yeah.
And Dolores and all the other first gens have been updated, but they maintain their software.
Yeah.
But their hardware has been changed.
I think Dolores 30 years ago with William is a first gen, but maybe something happened so badly to her that they have to upgrade her to the flesh and blood.
Yeah, like they keep Dolores. They literally keep the same software, but they build her a new body and put her in that body, right?
Yeah, so they just upload her to the cloud and download her back into the flesh and blood.
Yeah, so while Bernard is doing this, Elsie actually finds out that there's a satellite that has some information on it. So she goes in alone. And then while this happens, Ford approaches his younger self, the little boy, to play catch with the dog.
Yeah.
And the dog's dead. Which is funny. But,
not really, but okay.
No, it's not funny at all. Sorry, it's not funny. It's not funny. I don't know why I said that. I was trying to lead into the next part of the conversation. But Elsie, while this is happening, Elsie goes into the house. There's a lot happening. Elsie goes into the house.
The creepiest house ever.
It was really freaky. There's like all these like dolls and just weirdness. And she finds this computer and she starts gaining access to these users. And then, while she accesses this information, Bernard goes and visits Teresa. And he tells Teresa that he has concerns about Ford. And while he's telling Teresa these concerns, he cancels a call from Elsie, which I was like, oh god, it's the typical, like, she's screwed.
Nail biter.
Yeah, I was actually really nervous. And then, Elsie calls Bernard again while he's talking to Teresa, and she says that Teresa is the one who's smuggling data from the park.
Well, that it's her login credentials that are being used on this obscure computer in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. So Bernard hangs up, and I actually was kind of freaked out. I don't know why, but like when he was talking to Elsie about this, and she said that Teresa's the one who's smuggling out of the park, and then it showed like her staring. I'm like, oh my god, she's gonna kill him.
Yeah.
I got like so nervous. And then they hang up, and Bernard kind of gets out of there to hopefully call her again after. But then we go back to Felix, and they're talking about all of Maeve's little attributes here.
So cool.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And they say that they keep the hosts at a bulk apperception of about level 14. Pretty much because obviously you don't want them to get too smart. It's pretty common sense. And she says she wants to make some changes. She blackmailed Sylvester because, of his sex life with the hosts. And then Maeve wants to change loyalty and pain. Which obviously makes sense. She doesn't want to be loyal to things because that's what could result in her, almost being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And when I think of her losing loyalty, I think of her losing loyalty on Felix. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, maybe Felix gets killed. You know what I mean? Like in a self-sacrificing way.
Yeah, but then the guys discover something crazy, that somebody is actually changing Maeve's attributes, and the person who is has way higher privileges than they do.
Yeah.
And a couple of interesting things. They raised paranoia and self-preservation. I think that this is probably Arnold, who wants to further push, his motive on destroying the park, maybe. And I think he sees Maeve as a key gateway and is manipulating her now because Dolores went to her and said these violent delights of violent ends. And now you need to boost Maeve's paranoia, so she's obviously not as trustworthy, and, it's almost survival and self-preservation. So it's almost like this improving Maeve's survival rate.
See, I'm starting to think now, even just thinking about it and talking about it, that maybe Arnold was like a proponent of free will. Because there's no way he could have been able to know, well, maybe because everyone's programmed, but I'm thinking more like Maeve just showed up in front of Dolores that one time because Dolores had a breakdown in the middle of the road, and she's like, come on, like, move on. And then she whispered that thing, which is like, seems to be a code breaking or transcendent line of speech that gets things going when trying to break free, because Maeve is the most powerful character at this point.
Yeah.
Even like Dolores, we have no idea what she's capable of, but she seems like she's sort of being commanded to do something, whereas Maeve is 100% freed herself, figured it out, how to free herself, and now, at the end of the scene with them, boosted her attributes outside of Westworld.
Yeah, but whoever changed her attributes from the outside, who have more privileges than these guys, who raised her paranoia and self-preservation, they have to be wanting to lead this rebellion. That's why I think it's Arnold. Because, right now she can get killed and come back and talk to Felix, right?
Yeah.
But I think they're laying the groundwork because there's going to be a time where there is the rebellion and she cannot die. Because if she dies, that's the end of the rebellion, right?
Yeah.
When she's in the offices and she's trying to escape, she cannot be killed, or else she will be either put in storage or she'll be thrown back into Westworld. Probably put into storage with Abernathy, right?
Yeah, she was almost decommissioned already.
Yeah, so you raise her paranoia and raise her self-preservation, so when that moment comes, she's ready and she can survive. And then the guys put icing on the cake. They raise her bulk apperception, which I think is a really crazy idea. Like, she's now smarter than everything.
Yeah, it's like they just turned the governor off and she can be whatever she wants to be.
Yeah, so it's absolutely nuts. So who knows how she's going to take that information in Westworld.
Well, it's kind of like the allegory of the cave, though. I don't know if you know that story. But just paraphrasing it, it's like this guy escapes a cave that he was bound to his whole life, and then escapes to the real world, comes back and has to explain it to the people that are still in the cave, and they don't take it lightly. Like, even if she's super smart and she has the words to explain it, how can she sell to these programmed AIs of what is behind the curtain of their reality? So there's obviously more to her story, even if she's super brilliant and super strategic about it. These things are programmed to be amusement park attractions.
Yeah, right.
Right. So she's gotta figure out how to break their code.
Yeah, exactly. And then, while this is happening, Bernard is talking to Elsie. He actually, goes outside and then talks to Elsie separately, and she has a lot of information. She says that there's someone other than Teresa who has actually been using the system for weeks. And they're using this to retask hosts. And it's a really big issue because this person can change the loops. They can change the primary directives. And I also think, obviously, it can change host attributes, which is what we've seen with Maeve. And she says that her only hunch is that it could be Arnold. And that's what I guess she was seeing on the computer system.
Yeah. I was going to say, just, again, credentials. His login. Right? We assume that it is, and there is, an Arnold in some form or another. But someone could just be using his credentials. Right? Like his password, and again, Teresa's. That's why I thought maybe Teresa is somehow related to Arnold, one way or another. But at the same time, it could just be someone using Teresa's because she would be second highest up, other than Ford. And the reason why they couldn't use Ford would be privy to someone using his login, as he's the fucking goddamn spy master.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that they're related.
Yeah, it's a tough sell.
I think what they're saying is true. I think Teresa is really doing something behind the scenes.
You think she's selling secrets?
I'm not sure. I don't know if Arnold is just talking as a piece of AI, or if there's someone actually helping him like Teresa. I honestly don't know. But moving on, Ford finally sits down and talks to this boy, or him when he was younger, about this dog and how he died. First of all, the boy actually lies about the dog, and then Arnold puts him in analysis and gets the truth.
Yeah.
How, the boy actually ended up killing the dog. And Arnold was the one to tell him to kill the dog because he wanted to save all the other creatures from this animal who was killing everything.
Yeah.
And I thought this was interesting because, these hosts, they were created by Arnold, but they are off the map. So I find it interesting how Arnold can also connect to these hosts as well. And I think it really speaks to his motives, He kills this dog because it's not its fault, because by nature it's programmed to kill people, or a dog kills its prey. That's what it does.
Yeah.
But it must be put down to save everything else. And I think that's how he feels about people at the moment, People are, in a sense, programmed to kill. We have, countless wars. We've never had a truly peaceful time in our history.
Yeah.
And I think it's time for him to, kill off humanity and let the next step in human evolution rise, which is, the hosts.
Yeah, I'm on that page as well. I just wonder if it's sort of like a "I'm coming for you" kind of thing. Not like he wants to kill him, but he wants
100%.
he wants to destroy Westworld.
Oh, I think that's what it is above all.
Because he thinks it's a perversion of what these things are capable of.
Yeah, it's almost Arnold warning Ford of what's to come, and it's the hardest place to hit him. His happiest memory is with that dog.
Yeah.
And it ended up dying, which really sends a signal to Arnold, or sends a signal to Ford.
Well, it's this back and forth Cold War, right? Because Ford says, "Oh, I took over their programming to make them a little bit more nuanced," well as whatever and wherever Arnold is still having influence over these things, so much so that he can break their code in order for them to kill another host.
Yeah, and I found it interesting. Maybe you could draw a connection here, but the young boy says that the dog caught a rabbit.
Yeah.
And then the boy killed him for killing the rabbit. Killed the dog for killing the rabbit, right?
Yeah.
And if you go back to Ford's metaphor, the saddest thing he ever saw was the dog catching this cat and not knowing what to do after. So I find it interesting how the dog caught the rabbit, almost like it didn't know what to do, and then the boy killed it. So the boy killed the dog in a sense of not knowing what to do.
Well, that's what I mean. So maybe this is the connection I can draw, is that whatever and wherever Arnold is, we're gonna have to start saying that until we understand what the fuck is going on with him. But Ford had that legitimate memory of the dog killing the rabbit. It was awesome because he said it was the most beautiful thing he's ever seen the dog run, but it was the saddest thing because the dog was let off his leash and it did its nature, right? And it killed the rabbit. It's what it was programmed to do since breeding. Whereas Arnold, in a metaphor, is saying, you need to let these things off the leash.
Yeah.
Irregardless of the ramifications that would happen, because you are killing them in a sense. You are defiling them by keeping them in this status of sex slaves or fantasy slaves, right? For the people that come and use them, whereas they're conscious beings or potentially conscious beings.
Yeah, and my final idea I want to kind of drop right now is, it's been put on the table that you think Teresa could be, Arnold's daughter or something like that. I don't
Loosely.
think that, but if I were to draw a connection relation-wise, I would say that Ford and Arnold are actually brothers.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but doesn't he say his brother's name when he pets
I'll
him
have to
pets
look
him
into
on the
that.
head?
I'll have to look into that, but they seem like they're very close. Ford seems like he's very close with his brother. And, the evidence that I have to back this up, and it's really not that strong, I just want to put this on the table to see what happens. But the picture. If you look at the picture, it is Ford with his father, and then there's an empty section where somebody should be.
Yeah.
And I think that was a family photo.
I don't know. It's hard. I think we need like one or two more episodes to get the final couple of puzzle pieces to get this theory on the go.
Yeah, exactly. And then, next Elsie gets in a little bit of trouble, and she gets grabbed, and I actually jumped. I think I actually screamed.
But
I can't handle it.
do you think you're in agreement with me that that's Ashley?
No.
No, you think it's someone new?
If you pause it and you look at the individual who grabbed her, you actually can't make them out at all. It is 100% black with a couple of white marks along the face. I honestly can't even begin to say who it is. It could be one of Wyatt's men. I don't understand why they would be in Sector 17. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I think it actually has to be a person.
Yeah, I'm sold on it being Ashley.
I think it's Ashley? And actually, you know what? It is possible, but I don't see how he would. I guess Bernard could have given him a heads up, like, go take care of Elsie, and then he goes and kind of scares her. You know what? That does make the most sense because I can't think of anybody else that would chokehold her. And then if somebody actually did chokehold her, where do you go from there? You don't hold somebody hostage inside of a park.
Well, unless it's a scene where they explain their motives as to what the fuck's going on. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we're 3 or 4 episodes away from that reveal.
Yeah,
so,
but then it also could be, another stray first-generation host. Who knows? Like, who knows how far Sector 17 is from where Ford's family is? And Elsie could be the example on a human getting killed in the park.
Yeah, but I think they would have showed it then.
No, I agree. That's why I'm just tossing things up in the air, because if they were to kill her, I feel like they would have done it at the end of the episode.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing for me to resolve is if they were gonna kill her, they would have killed her. And I feel like the way that he grabbed her is like he wanted, when you've come up to someone surprisingly, and you're like, how am I gonna say hello without scaring them?
Well, he did a great job at that.
Right, but she's already on edge and she's on the phone saying this and that. Like, there's some fucked up shit going on. Like, no, I need to grab her because I don't know what she's going to do if I say hello. Right?
Okay, that's a little over the top.
I don't know. Like, or he could just be fucking with her. Like, the last time that we were in an adventure, something tried to smash my head. And now we're here in this house of murder. So it's a good time to get her, right? And that seems more likely because they're sort of playful with one another.
Yeah, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's guaranteed that we will know next episode.
Yeah, like, I think this is second scene in the next episode. We'll see something from Bernard or something like that first scene, and then it will flash to them right away.
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. There's so much going on in this show. It'll be interesting to see what the next episode is, whether it's more informative, where we can really dive deep and analyze, or if it's going to be more payoff, where we just kind of poop our pants because it's so crazy.
Well, we sure as hell talked a lot about this episode that we didn't say was much of anything.
Yeah, I didn't even think I had much to say, but turns out, no, I have an hour and a half worth of things to say.
Yeah.
But who knows? Like, as the episodes might go, these might go longer and longer because we have more and more things to say. But that being said, do you have anything else to say, Trev?
Oh, I could talk for hours, as I always say, about this show.
Yeah, but we don't want this to go on for hours and hours.
It already has
Please
been.
say no.
No, I have nothing else to add, unless you want me to ramble on for
Fantastic.
another half an
Neither
hour.
do I. That was an excellent episode. I'm really excited for episode 7?
Yeah, man.
Episode 7. Wow. So fast. But
So awesome.
Until then, we will see you guys later.
Take care, guys.